Welcome back. The Namibia Institute of Democracy, NID, will be hosting a discussion that aims to look at the labour market in the past 32 years and how the world of work has evolved since the country's independence. The public discussion on Thursday aims to take stock of the progress of the labour market since independence, the wins and the shortcomings, and to make sure that the Namibian workers are sufficiently protected in their pursuit for economic freedom. And joining me in studio for this discussion on the matter is NID's consultant, Uendjii. Uendjii, good evening and welcome to the Daily Roundup.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Just let's start, with the reflection of the past 32 years and, our 32-year-old labour landscape. How are we faring?
I feel like there's so much to say and so little time. Where do I start? So I think the first thing to take note of is that we have a notable gap in terms of readily available research and data. But generally what guides us at this point in time is the Namibia Statistics Agency's Namibia Labour Force Survey of 2018. It's the first survey that we've had. And based on that survey, what we know is that of the economically active population, that is to say basically of working age and physically able to work, 60% of that, 66.6% of that demographic is employed. 33.4% of that same demographic is unemployed. From different research, we know that about 32%, give or take, of the people working are basically earning a taxable income, which basically means that a taxable income is from, say, 4.2 or around about there. So that means that almost half of the people who are working are earning less than 4.2, which is not, I think that's maybe something to be concerned about. So there are a few things when we look at the labour market 32 years into independence that we should be concerned about, but there are also some things that we can be proud of. At risk of going too much into tomorrow's conversation, some of those things might be the Labour Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, the Employment Equity Act, and then also with that, then the Labour Commission and the Equity Commission. And so those are some of the tools that we have domestically. Internationally, we know that we are a member state of the United Nations International Labour Organization. We do fall short, though, of international labour standards in some areas. The Ministry of Labour, Industrial Relations and Employment Creation, they basically released a report for the most recent year, which is 2020 to 2021. That report tells us, for example, and this is just to highlight what I mean when I say that there are still some gaps in terms of research and data. That report will tell us, for example, that from the Labour Commission side, that they've had 405 cases of unfair dismissals. We don't, however, know how many cases were heard, and then we, of course, don't know how many cases are going unreported. So it's a little bit hard to gauge. In terms of the Equity Commission, what we are reading in that report is that there's a compliance rate of 63%. In terms of Equity Commission and affirmative action reports, 63% compliance is 37% uncompliance.
Right.
So that is maybe something that is of some concern.
Do you think, Uendjii, that Namibian workers are sufficiently protected?
That is a very difficult question. Strictly speaking, like I said, because we have some of these acts in place, we might be able to say, yes, they're sufficiently protected, but we know that it's one thing to have policy, to have enforcement and implementation is always something else. And also, it's also hard to take it broadly speaking because there's so many different groups of workers. And I want to use an example, for example, the Namibian police force. We are hearing more and more of cases of abuse of power and sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace and those types of things. And we also know that the police are a group of workers who are not allowed to be unionized. So it's hard to give a broad answer. The protections that we might have in place for us are not the protections that they might have. But broadly speaking, an area where we can say that some of the protections are very much lacking is in that we don't have a minimum wage in Namibia. So in that sense, I think I would say maybe not sufficiently protected.
What are some of the regulations you would say that need to be instituted in order to improve the quality of life for workers?
I think the most important one at this stage would be that we urgently need to have a minimum wage, a national minimum wage, and we don't have that at the moment. And that's what I mean when we say that, yes, we're a member state of the International Labour Organization, but we're still falling short of some of those international standards. So we don't have that in place. What we do have in place, we do have wage orders in place in certain sectors. So we're looking now specifically agriculture, farm workers, and then again also domestic workers. But even that wage order, the minimum, I speak under correction, but we're looking at somewhere between 1.2 to 1.6, and even that is not a taxable income. And there isn't really so much that you can do with that for yourself, yet alone for your family.
Right.
And what is concerning with that is if you are not even earning a taxable income and you're earning so little, in terms of education, we're already creating barriers for education and access to education. So we're sort of keeping ourselves in a cycle where we are keeping ourselves in a cycle of semi-skilled work or lowly skilled work. And where our other counterparts in other countries are trying to basically specialize in it and have specialized expertise, and where we're staying in that same cycle of semi-skilled labor, which is going to be supplied in surplus, and then we know what happens when something is supplied in surplus. The value of it, so to say, apparently goes down.
Uendjii, we're out of time, but just briefly as we finish our discussion, the discussion is set to take place tomorrow, and we're going to look and take stock at the progress made. However, what is the overall objective that you'd like to achieve with this discourse that you'll be having? So
just a point of correction, the conversation will happen on Thursday, the 8th of September.
All right.
From 2 until 4. And this basically is happening in partnership with the Hans Seidel Foundation. And the objective basically is really just to create a culture of dialogue in our country. We want to give, especially young people, something productive to engage in as well. We want to make sure that these conversations continue to happen, and also to make sure that we start to give more attention to the area of labor, and the working conditions of Namibians, and also to encourage people to pursue advocacy in that area.
Uendjii Black, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Nina. I appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. We're going to take a short break, and the Daily Roundup continues.